we meet the emperor's wife, who begs not to be abandoned. Emperor Alexander Grandia is cold and unapproachable. Alexander directly says that his wife was never his only one, and their marriage is just politics, while he considers his only beloved to be his concubine, Margaret. The grief-stricken Empress Maria begs her husband about love and mercy. A modern Korean student has read the book and feels very sorry for the main character. While the emperor amuses himself with his concubine, the devoted wife suffers alone in a cold room and eventually falls ill and dies. But Alexander does not grieve for his dead wife and immediately places his mistress on the throne. Our reader, having grieved enough about the fate of the poor dead woman, goes to bed. And she woke up in the body of Empress Maria in the novel. It turns out that the Empress had been seeking an audience with her husband for 2 whole weeks, and finally got it. So she dressed up and went to Alexander, deciding to change Mary's fate. In a cold tone, he asked what his wife wanted to say. Quite unexpectedly, Maria asks for a divorce, since she does not deserve such a high title. However, the emperor, seeing that his wife's intentions are serious, convinces her that Maria coped with her responsibilities very well, and he will not agree to a divorce. If the wife is offended that he did not visit her for 2 weeks, then she undertakes to come every day. Only the girl does not believe her husband, because she remembers the tragic death of the Empress in the novel. Maria convinces her husband that he will find a more worthy candidate than her, even Margaret. The emperor convinces his wife that he had no such plans for Margaret, because she is needed only to establish international relations. But Maria does not believe him and insists on a divorce, since according to the law, only their consent is sufficient. Alexander refuses to give a divorce and promises to do for her everything she wants, except for a divorce. Convinced that she can do anything, Maria leaves, deciding that she has achieved enough for the first conversation. And if she doesn't get a divorce, she'll come up with something else, since it's not in her nature to repeat the path of a book heroine. Leaving her husband, the Empress meets a concubine. She feels very free and is only surprised by the meeting since she did not plan it. But she quickly came to her senses and began to address Maria very freely, not according to etiquette. Margaret said that she had come to see the emperor, and Mary did not even hope to find a new way to attract her husband's attention. While reading the novel, the concubine seemed innocent of the situation, and the girl realized that she had jumped to conclusions and laughed. When asked what made her interlocutor laugh so much, the Empress replied that the concubine was trying to protect what rightfully belonged to her wife. Margaret got angry. Maria turned around and left, saying that her rival could take everything for herself, since she did not need it. After all, the girl is going to become a villain and enjoy her time spent in the Empire, because the treasury is at her disposal. Workers and boxes of belongings everywhere greeted Margaret when she returned home. In response to all the questions, she heard that the Empress was moving to her yard while hers was being renovated. If the concubine doesn't like it, she can move out. In response to all the protests, Maria slyly offered to live and have fun together. Out of anger, the concubine promises to complain to the emperor. He immediately ran to sort things out, saying that it was not proper for the Empress to seek the palace of a concubine. Maria reminded Alexander that she could do whatever she wanted. And besides, his mistress herself refused the offer to live together. The emperor demands that his wife not anger him and take any other courtyard or even build a new but firm answer that will not yield to him. And Alexander gave in, which made Maria incredibly happy and surprised, since he is still not happy with her, although he does not give a divorce. Our heroine waited for the concubine's protests, but nothing happened. Then she began to settle in a new place and occupied 80% of the entire space of the palace. No matter how large the palace was, from time to time the rivals met, And at such moments, Margaret pretended that she did not see or hear Mary. It was clear from her face that she was unhappy, but she still remained silent. And Maria wanted her to bother her because she could no longer come up with reasons for divorce and be refused. This means we need to do something else. Maybe shake the treasury further. The Empress threw away and gave away all her clothes and jewelry and decided to order everything new. To do this, she invited the best fashion designers with samples of clothing and jewelry. I looked at the catalogs with great interest and pleasure because I grew up in a family with a very modest income. I helped teach my brother abroad and could not afford not only to wear, but even to see such beauty. The master wondered whether she liked the samples and whether she chose them, confident that the Empress would agree with the proposed option. But in keeping with her role as a villain, the girl throws away the dress, calling it a rag, and demands more samples. The fashion designer suggests waiting 2 months while he develops new designs. Maria got angry, and since the concubine boasts to everyone about her meeting with this fashion designer, she understands that he has designed new outfits for Margaret. All clothes for the imperial nobility are made to order, so if someone has chosen a sample in a catalog, the tailors do not show it to anyone or sew it. One sample, one outfit, one person. The concubine's outfits were designed, and the tailor did not want to show them, so the Empress put her power on him. The brought catalog contained 14 samples, and Maria demanded everything, morally killing the tailor. She decided that she could afford such expenses, and after the divorce, she could sell them and live comfortably. At his report to the emperor, the financier complained about his wife's expenses, which amounted to 2/100ths of the entire empire, and also cited the words of his concubine that Maria was not worthy of her role. Alexander listened silently and asked those present whether a couple of dresses would ruin such a rich empire. I am the emperor and the power in our state. I myself chose the Empress, and you do not trust me. The financier was removed from his post and put under house arrest for 3 months. The rest, frightened, agreed with the head of state that the empire. Then, before continuing the meeting, he ordered the secretary to give the Empress a dress 10 times more beautiful and more expensive than the one she had chosen. The secretary tried to warn his master about the consequences of his behavior because he had only taken the throne 3.5 years ago, and he must have allies to retain power. Alexander is sure that the best way for him is to keep everyone in fear. After all, if he was interested in the title of a magnanimous ruler, then why would he kill his father in order to ascend the throne? Maria admired the extraordinary dress, embroidered with gold and diamonds, and could not understand the reason for such a gift from her husband. The maids were very happy about such an expensive gift, and did not hesitate to express it out loud, despite the chain of command. But the Empress was not angry, because she was grateful to them for the care they showed her when everyone turned away. And now the heroine didn't know what to do with a dress that cost as much as 1 castle. Maria decides that she cannot accept such an expensive gift from the man she is about to divorce. Friday dinner is here. The Empress organized this event. Earl Butlet compliments the organization of the evening, and Mary remembers that he is a minor character in the novel who helped Margaret destroy the Empress. And she laughs. The surprised Count does not understand her merriment. Maria tells the Count that she is not pleased with feigned compliments and that he should not waste his time. Now she was worried about this handsome man, because when she read the novel, she didn't think about it. Their silent glances are simply electrifying, but here Margaret runs out and throws herself on the Emperor's neck, showing the whole world how much she loves and misses her. The concubine tried to provoke the Empress, but she failed. The heroine hurried about her business to punish Marquis William by pouring a glass of wine on him, and in response to the screams, the Marquise smiled and sweetly said that the wine slipped out of her hands. The enraged nobleman began to claim that she did this on purpose. Well, since apologies are not enough, I will add one more, since my hand does not listen to me. The Marquis earned his punishment for harassing her maids. She beat the Marquis, and everyone was afraid to stop the Valkyrie. Only one person did this, shouting out just his wife's name. Finally, Maria decided to hit her in the groin with her heel to make it hurt more. The voluptuous man could not stand it and fell to the floor. The emperor tries to find out what it was, deciding that his wife has gone crazy. But Maria firmly declares that she did this deliberately and punished the scum in front of everyone and declare that she is divorcing him. And the emperor is still trying to figure out why she started this confusion. The wife argues that he should be happy in this situation. Alexander accuses the heroine of having nothing sacred, from which she concludes that he is trying to make her feel ashamed of her action. Therefore, when a doctor was called for her, the girl asked if the Marquis needed help more than her, since he had even lost consciousness. Our main character himself made sure that her wounds were treated, which greatly surprised his wife. And not only her, but also the guests were perplexed by such concern for Mary, because the emperor always cared only about Margaret. Alexander did not allow his wife to host the dinner because she was injured and the event was taking a long time. But he took her to the table himself, deciding that the lady was hungry. The heroine does not understand his kind attitude because she did everything to spite him, so that he would hate his wife and give a divorce. The concubine looked very worried. She didn't understand what was happening. In his speech, the emperor expressed to the guests the idea that today's party Fridays are more like a gathering of minor officials, so the guests do not have to tense up and behave relaxed. As soon as Maria was about to eat, Alexander smiled sweetly and caringly joked that she needed special food because she had spent a lot of energy. Meanwhile, the mistress is trying to draw attention to herself by complimenting the heroine's dress and jabbing at the fact that the dress is too pretentious, while Margaret herself prefers simplicity. The concubine always emphasized how modest and thrifty she was, even though His Majesty asked her to buy more expensive clothes. But she was shy. If we started talking about dresses, the emperor reproached Maria for not trying on his gift and decided that this would not be enough. The girl doesn't understand why he's saying this now, except to show everyone that they have a good relationship. The heroine decides to inject him in front of everyone, since her husband is so concerned about public opinion. She loudly declares that such gifts are not for her, but a whole castle or even a city would be quite suitable. Hearing this, the guests were horrified. Confident that she had finally driven him crazy, Maria heard a gentle voice that the castle, the city, and even the whole empire would be too small for her. And then, she is already his only empress. The concubine could not leave everything she heard and said that she did not need expensive clothes, since the value of a person is determined not by an expensive outfit, and a linen dress would be enough for her if the emperor was nearby. Alexander interrupted by saying that he had provided her with a decent fortune, sufficient for her position in society, and by becoming poor, she insults those who really have nothing, and also humiliates the dignity of the imperial court. After the evening party, nothing special happened, until an invitation arrived from Duchess Celia. The heroine is surprised because she does not remember such a character in the novel. She is not mentioned among Maria's documents. And if she is a friend of the Empress, then it would be strange if she ignored the letter. If you ignore her, she may be considered crazy, and in this empire, such people, considered possessed by the devil, are burned at the stake. And Maria is still overcome by strong curiosity about who invited her and why. The invitation has been accepted because ladies' tea parties are the best way to gather information about this world. It's so nice to get out into the world after sitting within 4 walls. The companion of the sun is the bright moon, says the Duchess, greeting the Empress. And the girl is interested in people whom she first meets, not in the palace. Judging by the title, this woman is the most influential at this meeting, and I would like to know more about her. Meanwhile, Celia compliments Mary on her outfit, which suits the Empress very well. But Maria cannot calm down because she does not know whether the Duchess is her friend or enemy. The time is approaching, but there is no more lady. And by her behavior, the girl decides that Celia is not Maria's friend. Among the nobility, talking about money and expensive things is considered indecent. If Celia mentioned the price of the dress, then she doesn't respect Maria at all. Even if real power is more important in this empire, why doesn't anyone respect Maria here? Surely they consider the heroine unworthy of aristocratic society. But our heroine is full of determination and enters the battle. With an innocent look, she talks about how many beautiful samples the tailors provided her, and she could only choose because the Duchess probably wants to fit this place. Celia could not tolerate the hint and, quickly making excuses for organizing the event, fled shamefully. If she continued to sit, she would lose her dignity. The satisfied girl thought that if you can't stand up for yourself, then there's no point in starting a quarrel. Then a late lady appeared, who turned out to be her rival, and began to apologize for being late. She was asked to sit down, but the concubine decided to get at the Empress. She expresses surprise to see Maria there and feigns joy at the meeting. According to imperial etiquette, if a person of higher status comes, no one else gets up from the table so that the guest does not feel lonely. However, everyone ignores secular manners and even seated the Empress and Mistress opposite each other. All the ladies began to shower Margaret with compliments about her outfit and taste. Now it became clear to Mary why they were invited: to increase the popularity of the concubine. The Empress decided that there was no need for her to stay here, and she had to leave loudly. The heroine overturned the tea table and declared to the astonished ladies that the upside-down service corresponded to the upside-down manners of this mansion. The frightened ladies began to apologize for their behavior. The Empress strictly demanded an apology from the concubine, and I heard apologies as well as excuses for my bad manners. Allegedly, Margaret recently arrived in the empire and is not accustomed to local customs and will be more attentive in the future. Maria got tired of listening to excuses and finally decided to leave. And the concubine could not even think that she would have to bow her head before the Empress, whom she ignored. The legal wife demanded that the concubine monitor her behavior in front of her in the future. When Margaret complained to the Emperor about what happened at the tea party, she received an indifferent answer that she should take care of such things herself. It is not proper for the Emperor to interfere in such matters. The mistress decided to find out how she offended Alexander, and also slyly ask him to talk to his wife about her behavior, which shocked the ladies. A wife should listen to her husband. As he left, the Emperor thought that Margaret had not lived up to his expectations at all. There is not a drop of modesty or virtue in her, since she speaks in a veiled manner, but she always goes towards her goal, which is to destroy the Empress with the hands of her husband. She looks like Alexander himself, just as evil, hiding behind the mask of a kind person. If he were naive and kind, he would hate her. However, his mistress is not so disgusted with him, since he sat the intriguer next to him. Margaret has become more demanding lately, and it's annoying. The Emperor began to guess why this was happening, because he began to be interested in the Empress. He comes to Mary and asks permission to enter. The heroine is very surprised by his late visit, but he still allows me to enter. Upon entering, he thought that he had not been in the Empress's chambers for a very long time, but now the wife wants to know why he avoided her for so long, even when she begged for a meeting, and now he has appeared. The Empress is evil and demands an answer. In response, she receives a sweet smile and assurances that the husband and wife do not need a reason to meet. Maria does not understand what she hears after the demand for divorce. And the emperor thinks that he has never seen his wife with such an expression on her face before. At first, it seemed to him that the heroine was trying to attract attention. But after watching her longer, Alexander realized that this was not so. The wife seems to have become a different person. Now she is more demanding, and he likes it. Previously, his wife imitated Margaret's style, and when they were close, they whispered behind their backs that the emperor did not spend any money on his wife. The emperor says that he did not think to see Maria like this. Over the 3 years of marriage, she opened up to him from a new side. There was no limit to surprise. Alexander compliments his wife's outfit, but the empress, deciding that he came with something important, did not accept the compliments and went to bed. Then I heard that my husband liked the way she had become, to which I heard the answer that she did not change for his sake. Our hero replied that he knew this because she asked for a divorce. From the voice of this seductive man, Maria felt excited. And despite the fact that they stubbornly drove him away, he still asked why she blushed so much. In response, I heard that the lighting in the room was like that. This is already interesting, the emperor thought. He never thought he would get so carried away. He doesn't like to laugh at others. But lately, Maria's reaction is like a disheveled cat with its mouth open. Previously, she looked more like a puppet than a living person. But now she is real. Alexander came to question her behavior at the last dinner party because he did not understand the reason for what was happening. But he thanks her for helping to get rid of the marquise. He tried to interfere in the affairs of a neighboring state. After investigation, it turned out that he had been pocketing the money for a day. They were found at his home. If the emperor himself had pursued the marquis, it would have had political consequences. But he took advantage of his wife's prank. Why the husband believes that she helped him is unclear. With her outburst, Maria attracted all the attention of the public. So the next day, all the newspapers were full of headlines about their love triangle, and the marquis was hospitalized for 8 weeks with a facial injury and a ruptured testicle. In any case, 8 weeks will be enough to investigate the illegal affairs of the marquise. The empress asked if he knew the reasons for her action. In response, I heard that the marquis was known for his adventures, and more than one lady in the palace held a grudge against him. Alexander invites Maria to become partners. Since due to a dry relationship, no one will think that they are at the same time. Well, their relationship is not only so dry in the eyes of society, so the girl refuses the offer. You don't want to deal with a person with whom you will soon become strangers. But Alexander does not give up and assures his wife that he will not go against her, and this means that he can return her at any time, even if you have to change to get it. Maria is sure that her husband simply does not know how to lose, because she herself will go through fire, water, and copper pipes for the sake of what she wants. 2 stubborn people begin to fight for victory. The satisfied heroine says that they will have to bite for victory, and her teeth are so sharp. The sight of the enraged fury aroused desire in the man. He can't believe he wants to touch her. So soft, warm, and tender. I want her to belong to him. He wants to take possession of her and cannot resist this feeling. This is the first time that the emperor feels strong desire for his wife. These unexpected feelings confused and puzzled him. Stroking his lips, rounded eyes, and pink earlobes, Alexander tries to calm down. After all, he doesn't know how his wife will react, and the lips themselves reach out for a kiss. It seems that the partner doesn't mind either, but Maria pulls herself together and gives the emperor a severe slap in the face. The unexpected ending discouraged the man. Our heroine is outraged that he gives up when they are on the verge of divorce. Attempts to calm Maria were unsuccessful. I had to leave, but his wife could not forget his touch. The empress is sure that her husband cannot possibly be sincere with her, because in the novel for 3 years, he never looked at the girl. Maria cannot understand why she was so nervous, because in fact, she never had a relationship. It was a terrible night. In the morning, the empress decides to look again to see if there is a law on punishing those who raised their hands against the emperor, since she did everything so quickly that she didn't even have time to come to her senses. But there was no time to indulge in despondency. The responsibilities of the empress awaited her, and very difficult ones, it must be added. All duties should be divided between the empress and the concubine. But Margaret was exempt from everything under the pretext that she had recently arrived. But 6 months had already passed. Maria is upset that everyone is ignoring her importance to the empire. The maids are concerned about the poor health of the mistress and offer their help in the work. But our heroine remembered in time that she was a villain, and it was time to act. Arriving at the concubine's chambers, she heard her telling the maids how the emperor liked her thick, silky hair and soft skin. When the empress caught her doing such a thing so suddenly, Margaret was frightened. She began to arrogantly ask why she owed the visit. The empress noted the fact that the concubine was calmly discussing hairstyles with the maids, while Maria was busy at work. Our heroine, without hesitation, threw tasks for her rival on the table. The emperor's favorite did not expect this at all. Maria solemnly put an end to her visit, hinting that it was time to stop messing around and need to fulfill her duties. What a bliss it is to simply relax, because all matters are thrown onto the concubine, even though she did not give consent. She tried to talk her way out of it with all her might. Despite the excuses, Maria ordered work to begin immediately. The concubine tried to intimidate that Alexander would be dissatisfied because it was his order. Maria reminded him that this was none of his business. But Margaret should know this because she became a concubine 6 months ago. Not everything went smoothly because the mistress performed her duties poorly, and areas in need of repair were not served. She sent the wrong employees, and sometimes she completely wasted the budget. The palace is like a mechanism where everything is interconnected. So after 3 days of Margaret's work, everything began to fall apart. The employees vying with each other asked the empress to return to business, since without her, they were going very badly. Maria constantly thought that these same people always took the empress's work for granted and did not appreciate her. And now they are scared and begging for help. The heroine was tired of playing the villain. She missed the quiet life in Korea. But if you start working now, everything will return to normal. Maria once again reminded that she was no longer going to work. She asked what Margaret and her maids were doing. The employees mumbled that the maids were trying their best, but it was not enough. The empress understood that if the concubine was not able to do the main work, the maids would not be able to do anything. The girl said that she did not want to listen to anyone and kicked everyone out. Thus, she scared everyone off even more and continued her strike. Those whom she kicked out ran to complain to the emperor. Alexander asked why she couldn't return to work, since they begged so tearfully, and he had to take upon himself all of Margaret's mistakes and train her. He asked for forgiveness for being inattentive earlier and allowing such a situation to happen. He promised that he would not allow this to happen again and asks her to return to work rather than ordering her. As an emperor, he asks for his empress, life partner, and mother of his people. Maria was amazed by his sincerity. However, she demanded a receipt stating that Alexander would intensively train his concubine and that responsibilities would be fairly distributed between them. The emperor agreed, but the condition for non-fulfillment of the contract will still be divorce. The husband swore on his own name and demanded a pen and paper. Maria did not understand why everything should be so complicated if she could easily agree to a divorce. In any case, the emperor kept his word. 5 teachers were assigned to Margaret, and she studied 10 hours a day. And at this time, Maria worked hard and diligently for 2, so that she could no longer consider herself a villain. As soon as she established the work of the palace, her maids began to discuss the merits of the mistress with everyone and flatter her. The girl tried her best to stop the flattering speeches, but everyone in the palace was talking about the fact that Mary had hired an expert in administrative matters. The officers in charge of managing the imperial palace, the person in charge of charity, and the person in charge of supporting culture and art are involved. It's very convenient to have such assistants. Everyone gossiped. And to all the praise, the empress replied that she did not do everything in order to be praised. But all the talk boiled down to how good their empress was. Only the concubine listened to all these conversations with anger. Margaret spent the evening decorated with many flowers. The guests admired the flowers. Compliments flowed like a river. The mistress answered with feigned modesty that Alexander gave them as a gift, although she objected. Women of all ages admired such romance and concluded that the emperor valued his concubine very much. Count Drape told the ladies that the emperor was terrible at the council meeting, and his kindness extended only to the ladies. The ladies began to object that he must have a good soul. The count apologized to Margaret for his words, but she replied that Alexander was a complex person, and she still did not understand anything about politics. Well, she's a lady. She doesn't need to understand politics, but the emperor is now tirelessly dealing with the affairs of the empire. The ladies began to praise the concubine for studying hard to be useful in the castle. The schemer immediately pretended to be dizzy, but she refused to call doctors for help. Everyone immediately began to feel sorry for her because she had to study a lot, and the empress had put too much on her. Margaret deliberately began to slander the empress, who allegedly spent several million on experts in business management, and so on. The guests immediately remembered how the empress beat the marquise at the banquet and believed all the speeches of the concubine. The ladies, in their indignation, instructed the count to talk with Alexander on this topic. He was extremely frightened and tried to make an excuse by saying that he had recently arrived in the empire and could not speak with the emperor on such topics. Margaret also joined the ladies, saying that the count would help her a lot if he talked to him, and she herself would do everything possible to pacify the anger of the head of state. The man was inspired and decided to talk directly to the emperor. It was very easy, Margaret decided. That's why she likes young men who don't know anything, because older ladies wouldn't react so strongly. For a young guy who is infatuated with young ladies, it is normal to act in the least rational way. The mistress was pleased with how well she had planned everything. The young man, without delaying everything for long, decided to act. He began to have doubts about whether he was doing the right thing, but he was obliged to fulfill his promise to his friends. If Maria is such a selfish and stupid woman, then this is unacceptable. She dared the ideal candidate for this position, Margaret, to be brought to tears. Confident that he was acting out of patriotism, the young man got down to business when the assembly was announced. The uncle present here decided to reason with the young man, warning him that he should speak only with permission. But the count decided to show everyone that he was not a green youth. The young man declared in front of everyone that 7 young nobles wanted to state something regarding the empress, and provided the compiled report. The uncle got scared and began to reproach him for acting on his uncle's permission. But Alexander stopped the marquise. The emperor assured that it would be very interesting to listen. He clarified whether the young man really wanted to put the issue of the empress's atrocities on the agenda for public discussion. Having received an affirmative answer, the head of state allowed to continue. The young man dreamed that everyone would appreciate his efforts, and he would take a position higher than his uncle. Seeing the emperor smiling during his report, the count became even more inspired. When asked whether he voiced his opinion or whether someone advised him, he replied that this was the opinion of him and 6 other aristocrats. Alexander cooled the speaker's ardor by rejoicing only at the 6 idiots. And if the young man did not wonder why the empress did this to the marquis, then let him read the materials of the investigation about the crimes of the marquis. The count could not believe his eyes. Those present were also surprised that the marquis was capable of such a thing. The Marquis almost fled to the kingdom of Rudikin, but the Empress risked her reputation and stopped him. Realizing that he had failed, the Count tried to justify himself by saying that hiring strangers to conduct business in the palace was a violation of the Empress's duties. The Emperor asked if he remembered what was happening in the palace when Margaret was in charge. That's when the Empress realized how unreasonable it is when the work is entrusted to two. And when she is unable to work, everything in the palace goes awry. Therefore, outsiders were involved because it was much more important to put the affairs of the palace in order. Alexander's words sobered the young man completely because it was necessary to punish 7 idiots who insulted the honor of the Empress without knowing the truth. He decided to cut off their useless tongues. Margaret awaits the results of her intrigue, remembering what happened to the Earl of Clexton. When asked by the maids about her bad mood, the liar replies that she is saddened that the Emperor rarely visits her. The girls reassured the lady that the Emperor was very busy, and although he did not come, he thought about her all the time, because she was like a saint who brought light to the empire. The concubine had an idea about how she could occupy the Emperor's attention, because Mary could not do this. As October arrives, when the wheat turns golden and the robins begin to build their nests for the bountiful harvest season, the mistress decides to hold an event to promote the new crop, becoming its goddess herself. Margaret sent Mary an invitation to the celebration so that she could see with her own eyes the first steps as the goddess of a new culture. Our heroine did not remember such a thing happening in the original novel, and realized that she had gotten away with all the concubine's antics in vain. The Emperor again came across her path completely by accident. Maria decides to attend her rival's event. The hostess enters the beautifully decorated hall. Wearing a short dress is too bold, but she needs to stand out at this event. The mistress wants to regain her influence in the empire, so she decides not to worry about the dress. She doesn't care what the nobles think, because they won't risk saying anything. Maria remains the problem, because she is a woman who attracts the attention of everyone, and even Alexander. The mistress was sure that her wife would come all dressed up, although until recently she tried not to stand out. But today, the goddess of the new culture should certainly become the center of attention. Margaret greeted the guests, introduced herself, and was speechless when she saw her rival's dress. The mistress realized that her dress was completely faded against the background of the Empress's dress. Our heroine called on the guests to be quiet, otherwise the concubine would not be able to utter a word. The intriguer could only bite her lips. Just as she was about to continue speaking, she saw something amazing. Alexander took off his jacket and offered to cover Maria's legs. The wife refused to do this, assuring that she was not cold, and her husband begged her to do it. However, Margaret decided to calm down and continue, since she was still the main one at the holiday. To begin with, the girl decided to introduce listeners to the concept of what a smartphone is. Previously, the speaker lived in Korea, and this is an irreplaceable thing there. The guests began to show interest and wanted to buy this thing. They wanted to know if she could make this item, otherwise there was no point in talking. The concubine just wanted to attract their attention by telling an interesting story, but here she had to answer for her words. The cunning girl had to admit that she could not make a smartphone since she was just a university student and not an engineer. She shocked the aristocrats with her confession. If she received a higher education, then she should be able to do all this, the listeners are sure. In this empire, those who study at the university devote their lives to science. Here, even among the aristocrats, few received higher education. She is in a mad panic. Maria does not know whether to intervene herself or leave it to the emperor. In the end, she tries to bring silence and allow Margaret to continue speaking. In response, she received an angry look from her rival, who in her heart blames everything on her rival, who forced her to do this. And in order not to become a laughingstock, the concubine demands that the maids take out what she has prepared. The girls say it's not ready yet and needs a little time. But the hostess demands immediate execution. It was a surprise that there were dishes from all over the world, because everyone always enjoys tastings. But some guests found the dishes too spicy, while others found them too sticky. Maria liked the dishes, but she understood that these specific national dishes would have to be thrown away, because foreigners most often do not like these dishes. Obviously, the people of the empire did not like rice dumplings and kimchi. Maria enjoyed the food, but decided that the tasting was a waste of money. And the concubine cannot understand how it happened that she is not the center of attention. Meanwhile, Maria tries to save the situation by calling on everyone to calm down and pay attention to her. Since every event in the empire is also her event, she wants to prepare simple snacks from the dishes that Margaret prepared. The concubine does not understand what can be prepared from these terribly spicy dishes. All the guests were distrustful of this proposal, as their mouths were still on fire. Alexander decides to save the situation and asks him to be the first to try what Maria has prepared. When asked if his wife had reasons not to allow this, he heard that the taste of the dish could be ruined by a bad mood. Walking past Maria to the table for tasting a new dish, Alexander said that he now recognized his former wife. The empress was still a little worried because the empire did not have many ingredients, and she had to get a little creative, taking into account the taste preferences of the inhabitants of the empire. Everyone watched the new tasting with bated breath. Pretty good, the emperor gave his verdict. Guests still can't believe that disgusting dishes can be turned into something edible. This means that the sovereign liked fried kimchi with rice and kimchi pancakes. The guests tried the dishes, praised them, and asked for more. The concubine left the event in the middle of the tasting, and Maria had to finish the banquet in order to save the face of the court. Although she helped bring the event to a successful conclusion, the empress still did not understand why her husband decided to conduct her. Alexander asks Maria not to be so prejudiced towards him. He didn't know that she had such talent and saw this side of her for the first time. The girl replies that even before marriage, she was interested in cooking. The emperor really liked her embarrassment. Our heroine still remembers the plot of the book, but cannot understand his behavior, since they are now about halfway through the novel, and the impressions are very different. Now she has recognized the emperor from the other side, and he no longer seems like a crazy tyrant. Alexander said that they had arrived. They saw Maria flowers in the garden, which are very beautiful, but poisonous. But they are sometimes used in the preparation of medicine. Our heroine decided to ask for what purpose they came here, not to admire the flowers. However, her husband surprised her by saying that he wanted to enjoy flowers with his only empress because it was charming, the only empress he ignored for 3 years. The emperor agreed that he had acted wrongly. The surprising thing is that after speaking about divorce, this tyrant began to often apologize and even admit his mistakes. Maria cannot understand why his attitude has changed so much. She believes that her husband is not doing this sincerely, but is simply manipulating her because he does not want to raise the topic of divorce. However, Alexander claims that his wife also does not want a divorce, just like him. In the original version of the novel, the emperor looked like a sociopath, loved no one except Margaret, and looked down on everyone. But now he looks like he's in terrible confusion. The heroine does not understand her husband because she cannot, with the wave of a magic wand, forget everything instantly. Alexander claims that he is flattered by the way she tries to ignore his words, and in general, they only came to admire the flowers, and there is no need to constantly quarrel with him. And now it's time to leave. Yes, this man is playing with her, using his beauty. The girl knows in herself that she is not interested in other people's men, and she would rather die than fall in love with him. Saying goodbye to her, Alexander thanked her for a great day, kissing her hand. My heart almost jumped out of my chest. Maria quickly pulled her hand away, said goodbye, and disappeared behind the bedroom door, sure that he flirted like that with everyone from whom he wanted to get something. Our hero also does not understand what is happening to him, because he seems to be drunk. And in the palace, all the aristocrats were discussing the fact that the empress beat the marquis to stop him. She is so noble that she sacrificed her reputation, the ladies said. The incident during Margaret's celebration, which almost ended in failure, did not go unnoticed. But the empress took everything into her own hands and saved the event. So someone like her deserves to be an empress, and everyone is happy that they have her. Only the concubine, hearing these speeches, could not survive her failure. She did not eat for 2 days and did not respond to the persuasion of the servants, but only drove everyone away, assuring that she wanted to be alone. She lay there wondering how Maria knew how to cook Korean dishes, since she was born and raised here. Perhaps she entered this world through a portal. This cannot be. If she had gotten into this world in this way, it would not have gone unnoticed. The most likely option is that Maria overheard somewhere about Korean cuisine. People who find themselves in this world are saints, so everything they say is recorded and stored, and a rival could read it. The concubine is sure that the empress poses a danger to her, since she can take away everything that Margaret has worked for so long. And the status and relationship with Alexander can go to his legal wife. Maria appeared on a street where prohibited goods were sold and caused a real stir. The merchants recognized her and did not stop discussing such an appearance. The heroine thinks to herself that she likes everyone's attention. The empress decided to create even more scandalous conditions for the divorce by spending all the money on the market with illegal goods. It was not possible to spend all the money on the market. Then she went into the store and asked to sell all the available goods. This indescribably amazed the seller, who, out of surprise and out of habit, began to praise his product. But our villain already regretted what she had done and was wondering how to get out of the situation. Suddenly, she saw a crowd of people. The security, like her, did not know what was happening. It was only clear that everyone was waiting for something. Now, there will be an auction, because all the most interesting things are sold at auctions. The discouraged guard had to follow the lady. It turned out that slaves would be sold. The slave trade is completely legal in the empire, and these people are prisoners of war. Maria had never even thought about such a product. She also recalled that in the original version of the novel, one of the characters had a slave background. The first to be presented was an 18-year-old girl of pleasant appearance, with the ability to embroider well. Bids started at 50,000, and when the amount reached 80, the empress stopped the bidding. She ordered the auction to be closed and everyone to disperse. The auctioneer began to say that he would suffer huge losses, and most importantly, he would lose the trust of clients, which is the basis of the trader's existence. The villainess, nevertheless, took pity on him and, handing him the check, said that as soon as he signed the check, all the slaves would be hers. The merchant was delighted at this prospect, since everyone had already left. Now, the heroine is faced with a dilemma about what to do with the slaves. It is impossible to let them go, because without knowing the country, they will starve until they get to a new merchant again. Then the mistress decides to take them with her to work in the palace. While taking a bath, Alexander listens to the report of a disgruntled servant that the reputation of the imperial family will be undermined by Mary's trip to the illegal market. The husband is not worried about the reputation, but about the fact that this is a dangerous place. He decides to go there alone. The guards began vying with each other to convince the empress that foreign-speaking slaves could not work in the palace. It was too generous for them. However, they failed to convince the hostess. She insisted on her own. She demanded that the slaves be taught language, manners, and everything needed to work in the palace. The slave girl thanked the empress with all her heart and could not hold back her tears. Seeing how frightened the people were, the heroine ordered the shackles to be removed and taken to the palace. And here Maria saw how the little slave was beaten for working slowly. A thick whip is ready to fall on the boy. The indignant woman asked why this slave was still here, since she bought all the slaves. He is indeed a slave, but belongs to the house of shareholders, so he was not put up for sale. The boy is lame in one leg, so it will be difficult to sell him. The empress bought a slave for a lot of money and demanded that he give her a whip. She hit the traitor with a whip, saying that even if he was a slave, he could not use it on a child. And if he continues to stand, he will learn for himself how dangerous the whip is. Our villain was sure that now she would definitely get a divorce. And the saved slave thanked her from the bottom of his heart and assured her that from now on, he was ready to give his life for her. Looking at the boy, Maria began to guess which of the heroes of the novel it could be. When the boy said his name, the guess was confirmed. Caleb is a minor character. In the original, he appeared in the middle of the book. Despite his innocent appearance, he also had a dark side. Having been a slave all his life, he studied diligently on his own and rose to the level of Archmage of the Seventh Circle, made a great contribution to the development of the country, and got rid of the status of a slave. After which, he created an information guild. In the original, he was in love with Margaret and helped her in everything. No matter how you look at it, he looks just like Caleb. He should be 16 now, but he is small and looks younger because he has been malnourished all his life. But then the emperor burst in, demanding answers to his questions. If you have come to scold me for the fact that the empress is where she should not be, in that case, wouldn't it be better to expel me from the palace? Maria entered the fray. Alexander asked who this dirty boy was and why she tried to kiss him. The heroine was outraged by the words about the kiss, because he considers her so shameless as to kiss a child, and she was just examining his wounds. The wife was surprised to notice that her husband seemed to feel better. He replied that he was glad everything was fine. When the heroine asked whether he was angry for going to La Mancha Street, she received a negative answer. The emperor secretly told her that he was the owner of this street, since immediately after ascending the throne, he bought it all with his own money in order to keep the border between legal and illegal under surveillance. Since not many people know about this, by telling her he shows his trust. Maria is not happy that she learned such a secret because no one will tell it to his wife, whom he will soon divorce, which means this is a demonstration of his confidence that this will never happen. The girl feels deceived. Caleb expresses his desire to become a warrior and accompany the empress everywhere. Maria convinces the boy that becoming a knight is very difficult and dangerous too. We need to find him a suitable job since Caleb is so talented. The boy admits that he was born with magical powers and will be able to protect her with this power if necessary, although he hid this from everyone. The empress invites Caleb to work at a research center to better study his power. Having learned that there are many of his age in the center, the boy asks not to be sent there. He explains that as a child, he was often bullied by his peers, and he is afraid to travel. Perhaps in the original novel, he wanted to take revenge for the bullying. Caleb continued to beg not to be sent away and promised to learn and do everything, and Maria could not resist his tears. The boy could not believe his luck that he would not be sent anywhere. He promises to devote his meaningless life to the empress, but she explains that the life of any living creature is not meaningless, especially of a human being. And Caleb vows to devote his life to his only mistress, to give every last thread to serving her. The dumbfounded empress asked not to swear like that again. Alexander is upset when he constantly sees the slave next to Maria. He should not constantly be near the protected object, and he will not be able to help in case of danger. The emperor constantly convinced himself that he could not allow anything to influence their relationship, and no matter who the slave was, the emperor did not need to worry about trivial things. Besides, he was more worried about the list of embarrassing things his wife bought on La Mancha Street. It is much easier to silence the press than to find out why they bought them. If it were another person, one would think that she wanted to spend the night with him. But Maria constantly insists that she wants to get a divorce. Alexander cannot draw such a conclusion and decides to ask directly. And if she really wants to spend the night with him, he doesn't mind at all. But approaching the bedroom, the husband hears that in the middle of the night, the slave is with his wife, and she, without accepting gifts from the emperor, herself buys clothes for the slave. Upon entering, he asks for forgiveness for interrupting the conversation. But why are the knight and empress alone in the bedroom at night? The knight decided to take the blame on himself, saying that he was to blame because he came himself. Maria asked Caleb to stop apologizing and stand up. She directly asked her husband if she could reward her subjects for loyalty. And if he thinks that she is cheating, then last time it was already said that everything is wrong with this child. Alexander replied that he did not suspect her, but wanted to understand whether the slave knew his place. Our heroine, as always, was angry that he suspected an innocent child. This man cannot understand why he is so impulsive around her and why they constantly fight. The emperor sent the slave out the door. Looking at him, you can immediately see that he is very cunning and is up to something. Maria cannot stand her husband's gaze and asks him not to look so closely. It's the middle of the night, and you're only here to compromise. But since you told me certain things, you want to hear something from me, the empress retorted. The husband answered his wife that the stronger she is, the greedier he is. The heroine advises her opponent not to do anything that is not required of him. He, as an emperor, must think about others and what needs to be done to make her happy. The empress replied that he could forget about everything and simply divorce her. This is such a shame, and Alexander is not capable of such a step. He would be more willing to kiss her feet. It is much easier. The girl decided that this joke was not funny, and she never asked for such a thing. The man makes the accusation that she has too high an opinion of herself. The counter-accusation was that he didn't care about her. If you really think so, Alexander decided, then I will prove to you that it is not so. Maria no longer understood either herself or him. But overcoming the pleasure, she was able to come to her senses and pushed him away. She slapped me and kicked me out of the bedroom. The emperor realized that there was no need to do such a thing. He probably looked crazy in her eyes. He didn't have the courage to ask why he came, but he still thinks on her lips. He cannot understand how it is possible to get such pleasure from a simple kiss with a woman. And why is it only Maria who makes him feel this way? Continuing to think about this, the emperor comes to the conclusion that he is strange for being so angry because of a slave in his wife's room, because it is normal for nobles to have several lovers or mistresses, even if they are already married. This is even enshrined in their prenuptial agreement. So if her slave came into the room, or she found a few more lovers, the emperor shouldn't care. But he cannot understand why this bothers him. Finally, the sovereign realized that he wanted to be with Mary, to share joys and troubles with her. At this time, our heroine also cannot calm down. She also does not soberly assess her feelings. Although her pride is wounded, the girl still admits to herself that she liked the kiss and responded to the touch of her lips. The villainess decided to rest today and not go out anywhere, not even to go shopping. But a maid came running and said that the emperor wanted to see her. Frightened of how she would look into his eyes, the empress began to come up with reasons not to go, But the maid replied that her husband had assumed this and asked him to tell him that he would come every day until she met him. In order not to put the maid in an awkward position, she agrees to the meeting. Alexander was surprised that she arrived earlier than expected. He could have waited longer. The heroine firmly said that it was an apology. The emperor simply said that he was glad to see her, and nothing else bothered him. But the question is, why did she come? Maria expressed a desire to briefly hear everything that the emperor wanted to say, since she was very tired, so she did not even comb her hair. Alexander apologized for what happened at night. She was not only surprised that the sovereign felt guilty, but also embarrassed by the memories of the kiss. The wife accused her husband of not caring for her partner. She wonders if it's not enough to just kiss the imperial concubine, since she's going to get a divorce anyway. Now, the emperor did not understand, because even at the beginning of the marriage, he said that he had not slept with anyone or kissed anyone. Maria's amazement knew no bounds. He has 2 wives, so it is logical that if not with her, then with a concubine. Alexander swore to all the saints that he did not cheat on her with his concubine. The empress believed her husband's oath, but still could not believe that his first kiss was with her. Maria could not remember whether there was a kissing scene in the novel. Our heroine stated that this did not concern her and decided to leave quickly. From the conversation, our hero realized that the girl was only pretending to be frivolous. But in fact, she is modest, shy, and often blushes, so her security needs to be strengthened. He began to wonder whether it was worth seducing his wife. Maybe it would be easier to make her a loyal ally. Maria cannot understand why there are no results from her trip to the black market. All the newspapers are silent. Most likely Alexander did something. Even though he is unshakable on the issue of divorce, he needs to separate somehow. Just what to do next. I don't want to go back, because she's on bad terms with her family. Then it's better to stay. Maria's problem is that she does not have a normal family and good friends. At the end of the divorce, all that's left is money. 2 things a divorcing woman may care about in this conservative society are jewelry and outfits. The heroine also spends money on this. For all the luxuries she has, you can buy a decent house in a small village. But since things are this way, is it worth straining the situation even more? Do you need more money for business, or would it be better to get a job in a tax or law firm, since you have worked in these areas before? It doesn't matter what our heroine will do. We need to make a plan and meet the right people. The emperor received a report that his wife had burned all the embarrassing products she had bought at the adult store. Alexander realized that she had not bought these goods for them, but perhaps by mistake. The servant still did not understand why the sovereign looked so upset. He also reported that the slaves bought by the empress were working unexpectedly well, and there was complete order in the palace. One of the rescued slaves heard their mistress being discussed and decided to eavesdrop. The maids praised the slaves for their good work, so they themselves felt better. The new workers are also very beautiful, real treasures. The girl was glad that the empress was praised for bringing such good people, which means she herself is also good. Then our lover of eavesdropping was unexpectedly frightened by Caleb. The slave explained that she heard the empress being praised and wanted to listen longer. The girl also spoke enthusiastically about how grateful she was to the empress for hiding their identities so that people did not look down on the slaves. Therefore, the girl is happy to work hard for the sake of the prestige of the mistress who treats them so well. Caleb agreed with her completely, but he was upset because that's what he wanted to say. The secretary in the evening asked if Caleb should be sent to her room at night, since she gives him special attention. Maria understood the servant's question, since it was customary for aristocrats to have lovers. But she was still angry. She explained that she kept him close to her to teach him because the boy was still young and not for him to serve her. The secretary offered his deepest apologies for his mistake. Our heroine never considered herself a real villain, so she was not going to tolerate those rumors that could spread throughout the city that a slave was supposedly servicing her at night. She also didn't want the boy to hear such things. The owner was always interested in Caleb's progress in learning magic. He looked happy that the teacher praised his talent and did not look like he had heard anything like that. The empress also praised him and said that she was proud of him. Delighted, the boy invited her to class to show off his achievements. He doesn't have to report to her, but she promised to think about it since he asks. Suddenly, he fell to his knee and began to apologize for the fact that he had been busy lately and could not see her, but had to protect her. He is her knight, but he has too many shortcomings, so he decided that the mistress does not want to see him. Maria immediately felt guilty because she did not pay attention to the boy, having become involved in a difficult relationship with her husband. And Caleb, not listening to her explanations, offered to help the mistress in a different way. He had heard that young slaves provided special services to people of high status. Therefore, the boy would like to repay everything, at least in this way, although he understands that the mistress had no such intentions. But Mary stopped the slave, explaining that this was wrong, because he is very young. Surprised, Caleb began to explain that in his hometown, people could get married at the age of 16. The empress convinced him that he should respect himself and do such things with someone he would truly love, and not with just anyone. After leaving the hostess, the schemer said out loud that it was a shame to miss such a good chance. Suddenly, the emperor heard him and demanded an answer as to what chance he was talking about. Caleb was silent, trying to think of something. Despite the emperor's bad mood, the boy tried to divert the conversation by starting to greet him ornately. When asked what he was doing in the empress's bedroom, the slave replied that she called him to inquire about his academic progress, but that it also seemed that the emperor was taking care of him. Alexander said that he was sure that the slave knew who was in front of him even at the first meeting, but did not show due respect. You can only be here thanks to the empress, but you betrayed her pure heart, and your intentions are clearly evil. The emperor began to demand whether he had any excuses, to which he heard the words that although he is a slave, he has the right to have feelings for Mary. But His Majesty need not worry, because he is just like a little brother to her. The slave claimed that he would never betray the kindness of the empress and would always guard her interests. As he left, Alexander demanded that Caleb stay out of his sight, to which the slave slyly replied that it would be difficult to do. Margaret instructed the secretary to conduct an investigation into Mary's life, but he did not find anything special. It turns out that she lived on the Duke's estate even before the wedding, and after that, she almost never went out into the world. This means that she was not really in contact with this world, the concubine concluded. Information in this world is public knowledge, so appropriating unpublicized knowledge about another world is considered a serious crime. The mistress is sure that such a dangerous business would not go unnoticed. Maybe she has some kind of book where she gets information from. You're like a stupid, useless thing. Margaret got angry. She is sure that the job was simply poorly done. To justify himself, the employee reported rumors that the workers brought by the empress were slaves. Delighted, Margaret began to demand information about the source of the information. One of the sellers on La Mancha Street saw how the empress and her guards went through the black market, shops, and bought up all the slaves. The next day, people in black came there to silence everyone. They also visited the media, which was the reason that there were no rumors. This means that Maria blocked all information, and maybe Alexander too. In any case, rumors that the empress was on the black market can be useful, so you can take a break from the investigation for now. The concubine decided that another job had appeared instead. This is the editorial office of the infamous newspaper. Margaret decided to write information about the empress and send it to the most low-grade publications, whose gossip no one believes, but everyone wants to read. The young man is not sure whether everything will be fine, but he must do what he is ordered. The next morning, all the newspapermen were talking about the sensation. Everyone immediately picked up the gossip, condemning the empress for not knowing decency. Now, they are already sure that from the very beginning, they knew that the empress was never chaste and well-mannered. The editors thought about the fact that there was no information about her lover, so with whom was she going to use erotic toys? But in the lover's favor was the fact that the emperor's relationship with her had gone wrong. And so many intimate toys need to be used with someone, which means everything is obvious. The editor-in-chief is also sure that even if these are just rumors, the imperial family will still not do anything to them, since according to the law, they have freedom of speech in their country. The secretary can't understand why they can't keep up with demand, even though they made many more copies than they planned. It's as if someone is deliberately spreading this rumor. Margaret was incredibly pleased with the work done and the result obtained. I would like to know what our heroine thinks about the result of her actions. And she rejoices at the rumors because if they never happened, she would have to spread them herself. But she began to wonder whether she had done the right thing. We will find out how our heroine will get out of this delicate situation in the continuation of the story.